Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying,
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Tuesday, September 3rd. That feels weird, Tuesday. But I blame myself. Took a little day off on Monday, back here on Tuesday, ready to talk about the LA Galaxy's 2-1 loss to St. Louis and what that means going down the road. Lots of ramifications for things. The Supporter Shield out of hand? It seems like it. We'll talk about that, and plus the LA Galaxy's next game. International break. Next game is El Trafico. They'll be doing that shorthanded. We're going to talk a little bit about that and how big of a game that could possibly be. So a lot to get to, a lot to talk about. In order to help me do all that, we're glad to have him back. It's Kevin, the Panda Baxter. Kev, how you doing, bud?
Hey, we took Labor Day off because we're big labor activists. Yeah, I've got my union logo on here.
There you go.
It's called Fashion with a Purpose there, Josh. Solidarity forever.
There you go. No, it was nice to listen. Full disclosure, Kevin was ready to go last night, and I was like, I even texted him during the day, and I was like, "Hey, you want a podcast tonight?" He's like, "Yeah." And then Kevin, I spent 7 hours hanging up vinyl lettering on the side of a container in the sun, and I was pretty cooked. I was pretty. I don't know. For those of you on like YouTube, you can sort of see I got a little bit of sun whenever I was out there. So the good news is though, Kevin, that after 7 hours of hanging up vinyl lettering that says this really nice thing, there were 2 words that were spelled wrong on there and will have to be redone. So wonderful.
Oh wow, was that your fault?
Oh yeah, 100% my fault.
Yeah, spell check. You got to spell check on the signs.
You would. So there is a flaw sometimes in spell check that whenever you use all capital letters, that it doesn't check them like it's a real word, because it's like, well, it's all capital letters, it's not a real word, right? Or it's a proper noun or something like that, which it is, but it still should be checked. So yeah, it's okay.
I
I
thought
was
that
fine
was
with
interesting.
it.
You said podcast, and I thought, well, I guess he's ready to go. But what you were really hoping was I'd say, no, got something to do. Yeah.
I was hoping you'd bail me out, but that's okay. I'm glad it was, all good. I would also like to point out, and I don't think I can say this too loudly because my wife will yell at me, but she doesn't listen to this podcast, so we're in a safe space here. She said she was going to come out and help me to do this. So we got there, we go out, it's in the sun, it's dusty, it's the train club. It's usually like that. We go out there. We are not working for 40 minutes, Kevin. 40 minutes. And she's like, how long do you think this is going to take? And I'm like, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours. And she goes, yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
me.
I'm like, cool. I go, here's the keys to the car, grab Jake, go home, and I'll call you. So I was at the train club carless for 7 hours. She did come back and give me lunch at one point, which was very nice of her, and then had to pick me up at the end of it in order to take me home. But yes.
So what did you spell incorrectly?
Mackerel. Mackerel really is. There's 2 mistakes on the word mackerel. One of them I'm an idiot at, and the other one is I just think that mackerel is spelled incorrectly, and I don't like it. So I always think mackerel should be AL at the end and not EL. And then somehow I forgot the C in mackerel, MACKEREL, but I would like to spell it AL. So I screwed up 2 of those things, which is going to
So you have to move all those letters over now.
The good news is the E in this font is a smaller E, so it's going to compress the word a little bit, which is good. But then the C is kind of big, so I imagine it's going to be real close. I'm probably only going to be off center by like an inch.
Do we know why mackerel was being spelled on the wall at a train club? Do we care?
Do you want? It's because the name of the railroad is the Mackerel Flats and Goat Hill Junction Railroad. There you go.
Okay.
Now you know.
Go.
And Mackerel Flats is a slur towards people who live in Newport Beach. Wanted to let you know that. Just like Goat Hill is a slur towards people who live in Costa Mesa. Now you have been educated on history, and now we can go on and talk about the LA Galaxy. Are you good? You satisfied now?
I'm good. Yeah,
Okay.
I have all kinds of stuff tonight prepared.
I know you were like, I got this and I got this. I would just like to, I almost at one point I thought about having you like take your headphones out, and before we even started the show, I was going to tell everybody, I'm going to be like, Kevin has these 3 things to talk about. Let's see how fast he goes through them, even though I ask him to spread them out and do it. I'm like I would guess like the over under for me would be 20 minutes. I think
I know
under.
One of them you're not going to let me talk about to the end. That's the big surprise, everybody.
It's not a surprise. It's not a
surprise.
surprise.
It's kind of surprising.
It's about the schedule, and the schedule stuff always goes at the end of the show.
See, you gave it away.
Yes,
See,
I know.
you're the one.
It's
you're the one
schedule stuff. Anyway, LA Galaxy 2-1, losers to St. Louis. Listen, I sometimes people think that this is the English Premier League, Major League Soccer is, where like if you lose a game, that's it, right? I'm here to tell you that winning on the road still very difficult to do, even for the best teams in the conferences. And St. Louis, despite where they were, Kevin, in terms of their positioning in the chart, had been playing better soccer. We saw it against Portland. We saw it. So I was not surprised at all that they caused problems for the LA Galaxy. The other problem that I see that sort of is that with John Hackworth taking over, the number of games under him was limited. So understanding exactly how he would do things or where he would go with things, you're going to have to adjust on the fly. Having said that, I actually think the Galaxy, looking back at the stats and everything, I thought the Galaxy actually, it wasn't a good game, but they didn't play horribly whenever you look at it. The defense actually played really well. The Galaxy actually held decent possession. I thought they had a couple good scoring chances, but when you look on the other side of St. Louis had 2 scoring chances. They happened to score on both of them. So for me, I wasn't surprised by the result. Especially, I'm a body clock guy, Kevin, and whenever you make anybody play...
It was brunch at the pitch.
It was, right? Whenever you make anybody play before 12 p.m. body clock, I'm always like, this is going to be a problem. It usually is. That's most teams. It happens whenever East Coast teams have to come over and play like at 10:30 at night, right? You know, for them and body clock. So body clock games are always difficult to sort of manage. The heat, the humidity, all the fun stuff that sort of gets in there. And let's be very clear. There were some players in the LA Galaxy who played very, very poor. And that's sort of what I take away from overall in a general sense from this game.
You know what you do with those for the early body clock games, the late ones I don't think you can do, but you have to get these players to channel their AYSO days when they played like at 7 or 8 in the morning. Just get like a team mom, orange slices, just try to get them into that frame
mindset.
of mind.
Yeah.
They'll be fine. Yeah.
Little Capri Suns, there.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Some granola bars for afterwards. No, I mean, again, you look at what happened, and you just watch that first half and watch the Galaxy come out flat. I mean, Greg Vanny said it afterwards too. He was like we were not matching the intensity of what was happening out there.
We've talked about this before, and anyone who watched the game on Apple TV heard, or maybe even on Fox, they talked about it too. I don't know. I was listening on Apple TV, but anyone who heard that, Stevie Wonder could see that the Galaxy really needed a real number 9 in there, that Paintsil just kept moving over to the wing. He's comfortable there. He's used to being there. He kept moving out. They didn't have anyone in the middle, and it cost them a couple of scoring opportunities, I thought. Crosses that came in, and there was simply nobody there.
Yep.
And then they bring in a 9. They bring in Barry to start the second half, and it's less than a minute before they score.
Yeah, it is. I will say... So let's go over starting lineup real quick. Galaxy losers 2-1. Your starting lineup was Joseph Paintsil up top. In that 9, Diego Fagundes, Marco Royce. That was surprising, by the way. Gabriel Peck, Gaston Brugman, Mark Delgado. You had John Nelson, Maya Yoshida, Jalen Neal, Miki Yamane, and John McCarthy. The surprising thing for me was a little bit with Royce. I think I talked about it on Thursday, Kevin. And for me, I was sort of like, how do you still maintain Marco Royce getting some time? How do you, manage him a little bit? And obviously I can't see him in training. I don't know sort of what he's able to do and how he's sort of able to play. So I didn't know where he was. But for me, I was saying one of the problems the Galaxy have sort of been that 9 position. And if you're going to do it, maybe start Miguel Berry in that 9. And there's history there. So that's not even if you go back and look at the stats, most of the games the LA Galaxy have lost is when Miguel Berry has started at the 9. So there's some stuff working against you whenever you go to do that. But the idea was that you do that by getting a big body in at the 9. You move Joseph Paintsil back to his more comfortable position on the wing. You put Diego Fagundes into the center so that way you can bring Marco Royce on in the second half. There was all these things that you could sort of make a case for. It's just so up in the air because the Galaxy really have not played well whenever Miguel Berry has started, so I don't know that that's a good thing. I think Miguel Berry has a very defined role on this team, and it's to come in, to bash bodies, to be a 9, to be a tall guy, to sort of put pressure on them. And you're correct in stating that, Miguel Berry comes into the second half and is able to put a pass together with Gabriel Peck, and they score. Also, Miguel Berry told us afterwards, Kevin, that was something they'd worked on in training. They thought that there was going to be space there for them against St. Louis, and so they worked on it in training, and then they went out, they executed it, and Miguel was saying, between me and Joveljic, or Decky as he's called, between me and Joveljic, we've probably given that pass to Peck like 20, 30 times in training, right? Like that particular pass right there. So it's something they worked on. It's something they targeted. It's something that worked in that moment, and they were able to find that space and do it. But you start Miguel Berry, and you have to live with the history of what happens usually whenever you start Miguel Berry. So I'm not sure that was the answer, although I like the 9, much like you like the 9 in that position. It's a toss-up. This is why I'm glad I'm not the coach. That's very much a difficult decision to make.
Well, I think that the Galaxy need to get Joveljic back. We talked at the beginning of the season, the target was 12 to 15 goals. He's at 12 now. He's been at 12 for a long time. He's had these injury problems. It's the stretch drive now. We'll talk about the schedule later, right? You promised me.
Yes.
You promised.
I promise we can talk about
the
schedule
later. We'll talk about schedule later, and you'll see it's going to be very difficult down the stretch. He's got another week off. Joveljic, I think, has to be back, has to be ready to play 75 to 90 minutes in El Trafico, and he has to be ready to play down the stretch because the Galaxy are a better team with him in there. Now, you're right. Put Berry in, just have a 9, just have a big body in there. That's fine. But Joveljic does a lot of things that Berry can't do. And it's time for the Galaxy need to start showing up. It's been a great season. I'd hate to see it go down the tubes now, but this schedule, as we're going to talk about, this schedule is really tough, and they need to have everybody. Audi has to come back at some point. I think they need to be 100% for the stretch drive.
One is you can't say, the Galaxy need to show up, like as in they haven't been showing up, right?
What I mean is they need to be healthy, and everybody needs to be
correct.
healthy.
I agree with that. The Galaxy have had a really good season up to this point, and they haven't lost 2 games in a row all year. That's certainly in the cards coming up whenever you look at El Trafico coming up in 2 weeks, right? Week and a half, not even a week and a half. I guess it's Tuesday. It's like a week and 5 days or something at this point.
It's close. It's close.
It's closer than you'd like it to be, right? So the Galaxy get a chance. They get Julian Aude is more than likely training this week, should be possibly available for El Trafico. That's sort of been the theme there. You had Dejan Joveljic. By the way, his 100th appearance in Major League Soccer for the LA Galaxy and in Major League Soccer's the league overall. 100th career regular season appearance for Dejan Joveljic. He got to play in this game for a little bit in those last couple minutes. And people, I think there was some criticism of him and like, he came on and he disappeared. He's playing in a 2-striker system. We know that the Galaxy aren't great in the 2-striker system. They had a good chance in there during his time when he came in. So as far as I'm concerned, that was probably a pretty good solution for them. But looking at that, you need Dejan Joveljic. You need the real 9 that you need is not Miguel Berry. You don't want him starting as your 9. You want Dejan Joveljic starting as your 9. And I don't know if in the game, against LAFC and El Trafico, if you start Dejan Joveljic knowing he can only give you a half. Maybe you go a half with Dejan and then you adjust in the second half if you need to, but you need to make sure that you do something that you're able to change things. Maybe you start Miguel Berry the first part of that. The whole deal is that you have to worry about that. You're going to have to worry about that more because Joseph Paintsil gets suspended for El Trafico. So he's not going to be playing. Not to mention
Riqui Puig will be back.
Yeah, Riqui Puig will be back, who was missed in this. I think we have to talk about this issue as well as a separate issue, but Riqui Puig will be back. He missed the St. Louis game. The Galaxy could have used him for sure. I thought that St. Louis did a really good job of clogging the middle. If you look at what Marco Royce had to sort of put up with in the middle, I don't know that Puig solves that issue, but anytime Riqui Puig is on the field, you're better. That the Galaxy are a better team. So I don't disagree with anything that goes where anybody can say that Riqui Puig needed to be on the field. He needed to be on the field for that.
Well, one thing I think with this, we're talking about there was a 9 missing, and there wasn't really any solution. You talked about maybe Berry. Well, maybe not. We don't know. Maybe Berry starts. Maybe it's different. Maybe Fagundes plays in there. The point was there was a 9 missing, and it was missing because Joveljic was hurt, and he's been hurt for a good part of the second half of the season.
Right.
You added Peck. If you're Will Kuntz, you added Peck, you added Paintsil, you added Royce. You did a lot of great things. But now we're back to where we started the season, right? With, hey, do they need to get another striker? Do they need to spend some of this money and some of this roster spots they have on a striker? And I think we're back to that conversation again.
We're not, because there's no more money to spend, so we're not going to be talking about that. It's over. That part of everything is over. We will be talking about it in the off season, certainly, but not right now.
No, we can't do it now. We can't do it
Right.
now because the window's closed.
So that's
some of the super chat money that you're getting could go to a striker.
Maybe. By the way, we started the show with some great super chats. Let's get to them real quick. $5 from Gary. Can't make the live show tonight, but we'll catch it on Spotify. Hello to everyone in chat, and gentlemen, thanks for another rad pod. And then we have I'm gonna go with Steph. We're gonna call Steph. Steph also gave us a $50 super chat. Wow, Steph, awesome. Belated thank you to Josh, Hammer, Panda, Sophie, and El Nino for the amazing work this season. Moved back to Vermont temporarily this year with my wife, so COG has made me feel at home. Looking forward to catching a playoff match at the Digs.
Good syrup there, right? Vermont syrup?
Yeah, that's what I hear. I mean, I would imagine so. It's like right there, right? Yeah. Can you get like what kind of trees give maple syrup? Are they maple trees? Is that how that works?
Syrup trees.
Syrup trees. Okay, good. That's
syrup trees.
When you get the blueberry syrup at Pancakes R Us, which is
it's a blueberry.
It's
tree,
the blueberry
tree.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I.
The
figured.
one that's hard to find is really hard to find the boysenberry trees.
I was looking for the chocolate tree because they have the chocolate syrup that goes on there. It was the chocolate tree. So anyway, but thank you for all that. Certainly appreciate those super chats. Are awesome. No.
Do you ever go to IHOP? Speaking of pancakes, I never feel like hopping out of there when I'm done.
I roll out of there. Yes.
Yeah. I wheelbarrow.
My grandfather, before he departed this fine earth, whenever he would come out and stay with us during the wintertime, he lived in Pennsylvania, and he would come back out. He would go to IHOP like every maybe 2-3 times a week, and my mom would take him, and like he had the server knew him and like all that stuff. It was like the same guy. He saw him come in, would give him his coffee, that type of thing. So I've had my fill, I think, of IHOP and pancakes for most of my. That was like a good 3-4 years of that every winter.
Yeah, had a good run. And then,
yeah, it was good. So back to the game. The bottom line is that the Galaxy now have to adjust in whatever they're doing. Now, in this game, some poor performances. I think the one that stands out the most for me is going to be Joseph Paintsil. And it wasn't just one thing, it was multiple things. I would like to point out that the Galaxy, in terms of expected goals and everything that goes on there, held St. Louis to a 0.7 expected goals. Right? They also only created a 1.1. When you look at that, it seems very likely the Galaxy should have escaped this game with a draw, right? A 1-1 draw, or they win the game 1-0, just in terms of the XG that they created and what they were trying to do. That being said, the goal that came from the Galaxy was probably like a 0.6 or a 0.7. So most of the chances that came out of the Galaxy's night were from the goal that Peck scored. There was not a lot of offense. Again, I think you pointed it out. Paintsil not being in the positions where you'd want a 9, crosses coming through and nobody being there. The Galaxy, I think, were impatient with a lot of things, but Joseph Paintsil has been sort of in this funk. We were sort of expecting that hopefully he would relax himself out of it, mostly because I think he's exhausted at this point. I think he's played so much soccer that his body can barely stand up anymore.
Yeah, but he is coming off a pretty decent sized break, and he's getting another one now. So and he's going to miss a game, so it's going to be like a 3-week break.
Well, he's not really getting a break because he has 2 international games to play whenever he goes. So, and he has to travel a long distance and come back, but he won't be ready. The big problem that I have with Paintsil was in the goal, in that second goal. And basically, the Galaxy do a good job, as they did most of the night, stopping St. Louis from really taking a lot of shots and really forcing McCarthy to make any giant, great saves. They stepped up, they won the ball, and they pushed that ball out. Paintsil gets the ball, and he goes to pass it, and it's a poor pass. And listen, Greg Vanney was very clear after the game. He said, I expect mistakes will happen, and I'm not going to punish guys for mistakes, but it's how you react to that mistake. And that was the thing. On Twitter, I actually said the same thing, is that Paintsil gives up a really poor pass in this situation, and it leads to a direct counter immediately, with St. Louis already having numbers because they had just crashed forward. It's already giving the Galaxy odd man rushes from that. The ball gets pushed up the left-hand side. Cerrillo's trying to ghost back into some space, and Cerrillo had just come on not too long ago. Cerrillo tries to ghost back into space, doesn't quite step into the cross where he should have. And St. Louis is able to capitalize on that. Let's talk about that one. We can also talk about the other one was basically a McCarthy clearance and a McCarthy bad pass, and this is where the Galaxy shoot themselves in the foot. But a McCarthy bad pass out of the back, quickly countered, turned over, St. Louis scores. both of the goals that the Galaxy allowed were on poor turnovers. My whole thing is, where's the reaction, though? And it's the reaction from somebody like Joseph Paintsil. He gives up the ball. It's his guy that goes in behind him that ends up at the top of the box. Greg Vanney talked about it after the game. He's like, where's the reaction to that? Because if you're Joseph Paintsil and you give up the ball, that's fine, but you got to give back into that box and start defending, because the Galaxy are odd-manned at this particular point. And Paintsil looked like he had no interest in that. It looks like he was playing defense like Riqui Puig out there.
Well, and he's the fastest guy, so if someone can recover on that team, it's him.
It's him, right? And you could tell he was frustrated. He wasn't getting some calls. I mean, listen, I thought overall the game was probably fairly well managed by the referee. There are a couple calls that were pretty bad. One is that St. Louis's first goal may have been a handball, but I didn't see any evidence, like crystal clear and obvious error evidence that was going to overturn that for me, Kev. So for me, I didn't have a problem with that. That was fine. But it's, again, the turnover by McCarthy and then the reaction to that and how you step in and try to close things. And then, quite honestly, Mark Delgado makes a great tackle on a ball, and the ball pops up and the guy controls it, whether he controlled it with his hand or not. He controls it like right into his path and is able to fire and shoot in a place where really it looked like the Galaxy had won and stopped that chance again. But bad distribution by McCarthy. McCarthy has to watch it. I'm telling you right now, Mitrovic is right there, Kevin. I don't see a lot of separation between these two. And if McCarthy keeps distributing that poorly, especially down the stretch, I do not put it past Greg Vanney to switch goalkeepers at this point. I swear to God, he's going to go with whoever's hot and who's ever going to keep him in the playoffs. It is going to be ruthless and cutthroat. And so McCarthy has to be better with that.
We've talked about McCarthy a lot, or at least I have. And I love John McCarthy. I think he's a good goalkeeper. But this is part of what you live with him. You know, the last time they played St. Louis in the home game, he actually put the ball on the goal himself. This time it was just a bad pass. So that's just some of those things that John McCarthy does. And yeah, you know, if they bring Mitrovic in because they think that he's the hot hand, now fine. But that's just sort of where John McCarthy's been his whole career. You know, he is second in the league in saves. He's had a good season. He's had a career high season. This game was clearly not his best game. And the other thing with Paintsil is, you talked about some of the other problems he had. Another yellow card for dissent. He has a number of yellow cards this year, most of them for dissent,
right?
Which is that's and Greg Vanney talked about that. That's unforgivable. If you make a foul because you're trying to prevent a goal and you get called and you get a second yellow card or whatever it is, and you miss a game for that, that's one thing. But for dissent, that's just a lack of discipline, a lack of self-control. On the bright side of that, I think if you look at the lineup the Galaxy will have to use or are likely to use with Paintsil out, you'd have Royce would, I think, move in on that wing, and then you'd have
I would
Riqui Puig in the middle, put Peck on the one side, and Joveljic in front.
I think that you're going to end up. I think Fagundes is going to end up playing on the wing. I think you're forgetting about our good friend Diego Fagundes. I think that Marco Royce doesn't need to start against LAFC. I don't know that if you have Joveljic back, that's a lot. I would put that at 50-50 right now. I don't know that Joveljic played 20 minutes roughly. That's about as much as you get. You want him for, usually if you start, you have to go 60, Kevin. And do you want Joveljic to come off the bench, or do you want him to start? Starting is probably a better choice for the Galaxy just in terms of how they want to play.
Well, I look at it as if Royce starts in the heat in St. Louis and goes 90 minutes when Paintsil's on the field. Mm-hmm. When Paintsil's not on the field, it just seems like that's where he slots in.
That's tough. I mean, that was another surprise, was just Royce being out there in the heat, in the humidity, and all the fun stuff that was sort of happening for him. I wanted to talk about, though, we were talking about like the discipline and what's going on. There's two players who have had this problem. It's Riqui Puig and it's Joseph Paintsil. In terms of
first time the Galaxy have lost without Riqui Puig.
Yes,
a game that he missed and that they wound up losing. I think they were 3-0-1 or 2-0-1.
I think 2-0-1. I think it was 3 games, but it might have been one more. They needed Riqui in this, but I asked Greg Vanney afterwards. I said, was Joseph Paintsil aware of the fact that he had yellow cards? And he was like, yes, he was very much aware. It's like, okay, and they always are. I mean, I asked the question knowing the answer is going to be yes, because this is not an unprofessional organization. They're going out. They're telling Joseph, they're like, remember, you're on yellow card watch. You get another one, you'll miss all Trafico. You need to be careful with it. I asked Greg Vanney about Joseph Paintsil, but not just about Joseph Paintsil. I think about Riqui Puig as well. And he goes, I feel a little better about Riqui because Riqui got one trying to break up something down the middle. Yeah, but I believe Riqui Puig has had 2 yellow cards for fouls this year. He's had 8 yellow cards, which gives him, I think, 6 for dissent. So he's had a problem with dissent. And listen, I get it. The LA Galaxy, a lot of times, especially some of their smaller guys, both Paintsil and Peck and Puig and all three of the DPs, they get fouled a lot, Kevin. And a lot of times they're not getting the call because they're slighter build, because they go over a little easier. It doesn't mean they're not fouls. Peck got fouled. That was one of the big problems I had. Dickerson missed this call. Where Peck was cutting in and he went across the top of the box and he still has the ball and somebody just ran up straight arm right into his shoulder and just pushed him off the ball. I'm like, it's not shoulder to shoulder. You reached out and pushed somebody. That's a foul. Like, it's a foul any day of the week. And then you saw it go back on the other side, and then Paintsil was complaining. And the whole problem with this is, as Greg Vanny pointed out, you're on yellow card watch. You know what's going on. This wasn't even in the moment. It was behind the play. You're still jawing. It's like you're trying to get a yellow card at that point. I don't remember if you remember whenever Jelle Van Damme decided that he didn't want to play anymore and would go out and just get red cards whenever he would play. Or I think we've even seen some other Galaxy players possibly do that in the past as well, which is sort of like, I'm done. I don't know that that's the case for Joseph Paintsil, and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He may be tired. He may be homesick. I mean, we can certainly assume and guess all these things. We don't know, but ultimately, Paintsil needs to be more professional in that moment. He doesn't need to pick up a yellow card there, and because he didn't do it, Greg Vanny actually said, we'll deal with that internally, which usually means we have to talk about that. We're going to deal with it. By the way, if I'm Greg Vanny, I don't know that I do much about it. Where's the punishment? What would you punish out of Joseph Paintsil? You want that guy feeling good. You want him feeling there. You go up to him and you say, it can never happen again. It's just that simple. It's like, you can't put us in that position. Go off to international break. Go have fun. Go enjoy soccer. Come back, and we'll be ready for you whenever you come back. That's about all you can do, because I don't see, like, we're going to bench you, or, you yell and scream at them. This is not, and it's funny because I get suggestions all the time, Kevin, maybe you can weigh in a little bit on this, but this is not high school soccer. This isn't college soccer. There's very few coaches who just yell and scream at guys all the time. This is more collaborative, as it is at the professional level, right? You've been around professional baseball locker rooms and stuff like that. You can yell at the young guys. You can sort of do it. But overall, if you have a guy who's one of your better players on the team, you're probably coming up to him and being like, what do you feel like doing in this situation? Like that type of thing. Be collaborative with it. I'd really like you to lay down a bunt, but how are you feeling? It's like, oh, well, I'm feeling great, Skip. I'm going to go out there and hit a double. It's like, go hit the bat. Go swing the bat then. That's how it is in soccer too. How are you feeling in these moments? What would you like to do? Marco Royce, what would you like to do in this moment? Greg Vanny's not out there yelling at Marco Royce, and he's probably not out there yelling at Riqui Puig. They're going to have come to an understanding. Hey, Riqui, I don't want you to do that because when you do it, it does this to us. So I need you to do this. Does that make sense? Okay, you want to do that? That type of thing. Doesn't that seem like that's how that more is?
One of the things Bruce Arena told me, I remember we had the conversation about, hey, you're supposed to treat everybody the same. Everyone is on the team is equal. And he goes, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to treat David Beckham the same way I treat a 19-year-old kid that's making $70,000 a year. They have to be treated differently. And it's not that they're treated differently. It's that David Beckham has earned this and the other guy hasn't earned it yet. And he gave me a lot of examples. But I worked for an editor named Marty Barron, and he went on to be the editor of the Washington Post. He was the best boss I ever worked for. And one thing that he would do that I thought was really effective, and I've heard people that worked with him in other papers say the same thing. If you screwed up, he'd call you into his office alone, shut the door, sit down, and he'd say, what happened? And you'd explain why it happened. And you couldn't, there's no excuses. There was no, the sun was in my eyes. You had to tell him what happened. And then he would say, what are you going to do to make sure this doesn't happen again? And then you would explain whatever procedures you had put in place. And then you never heard from him about that again. Now, if you screwed up, I never repeated the mistake. Right. Maybe if you screwed up, maybe if you had screwed up again, then you would hear from him. But I could imagine that kind of a thing with Greg Vanny going to Paintsil. So, how did this happen? Okay, you lost your cool. Okay, how can we make sure that you don't lose your cool again? Is there something we can do to help you? Have you got it? Okay, good. And then you never hear from him again.
By the way, that also doesn't mean that I don't think Greg Vanny yells and screams sometimes. I fully do. I think he does that more in terms of team stuff than he does on an individual basis, right? Like you can yell at a team, you coach individuals a lot of times, right? That type of thing. Bruce Arena used to yell. Bruce had and probably still does, if you could probably talk to AJ or Omar or any of those guys, has like the dirtiest mouth. If you ever heard him in training, he would do that. I used to stand on the outside of the fence, remember, because they wouldn't let us watch, which is fine. I never complained about that. But there's like a blue netting that you can't see through. So we used to like lean up against that so you could hear what was going on. So that way at least you could sort of pay attention to what's going on. And Omar, I can only imagine. They were playing like, a short-sided game, however it was. And I think Omar raised his hand for like offside. And Bruce just blows the whistle and starts screaming, "Omar, put your effing hand down." Like the whole day just unleashes, and everybody's like, "Oh, okay." Like, this is the thing. And those are important little learning steps. And Omar was a younger player who thought he had a big head sometimes. And so Bruce would sort of check that and do that. So again, I think there's different styles. I think everybody has their way of doing things. I don't believe that Wilfred Nancy is out there screaming and yelling at people. I think that he has a very, very good way with players and how to get the most out of them. I think Greg Venny's are very good with players.
I've seen two ways to do it. Tommy Lasorda, by the way, would give Bruce a run for his money.
I have met and heard Tommy a couple different times. Yes, I agree.
Of all the times I covered Tommy, I never heard him put two words together without a F in the middle. But I've also seen managers that will. Joe Torre did this, where the manager was the great guy. Like, hey, don't worry about it. You guys that are complaining about this, they're giving you a hard time. But he had a coach at one point. It was Larry Boa, who Joe would say, "Go rip this guy. Go tear him a new butthole. Go." And Joe was behind it. But then Joe would come behind and say, Landon Donovan and Robbie Keane were like that with the Galaxy. Robbie Keane would criticize it. He was merciless on Giassi's artist.
Right. And
then Landon would come behind and say, "Don't worry about it. He's just a little upset today." And so the first player made the point. The second player said, "Don't worry about it.
Right.
Everything's okay." And it worked.
Well, I mean, Riqui Puig has talked about the fact that that the three DPs yell at each other between Peck and Paintsil and him. And he's like, yeah, sometimes we yell at each other. Sometimes, it's because we want the best out of each other. We're yelling at each other. Again, there's accountability at all these different levels. I can see that whenever I'm around the team. You can see how this team reacts to those things.
But just saying, what?
Yes.
I want to say, too, you're right. It's accountability, and that's the key word. And I think those three guys are holding each other accountable. But there is a line that you can be crossed, and I think Zlatan crossed that a lot. Zlatan wasn't, "Hey, you need to do better." Zlatan was, "You're not good enough."
Yeah.
And it came. Dave Romney and others talked about that. It came off as, "You're not as good as me." Of course, I'm not as good as you. That's why I'm here in MLS. And so I think when you have Paintsil, Peck, and Puig, they're holding each other accountable. Do better. I'm coming. Whatever. Not, "You're just not good enough to play with me."
Right.
And I think that's how it came off with Zlatan a lot. By the way, looking ahead to El Trafico, I just want to say before I forget. Riqui Puig gets beat up in those games. I know El Nino had some stats about how ineffective he's been. He just gets hammered. I want to see, again, if Marco Royce does play, as I think he may, I want to see how Marco Royce handles that, whether he becomes kind of the protector, because I'm not saying the other guys haven't been around, and certainly Riqui Puig played at Barcelona, but Marco Royce has been places a lot of these other guys dream about going, and he knows the gamesmanship.
Right.
And I wonder if he steps over and says, hey, Tillman, you want to knock him down again? Come after me next time. And whether Royce steps in and kind of becomes a policeman for this.
It'll be interesting to see. I want to see all that. I think there's a lot of time between then and now to sort of understand who's ready, who's not going to be ready to go for 90 minutes. I think Marco Royce will be ready to go 90 minutes. I think that's the play. Just don't know if that's how you're going to effectively use him in that situation. My whole thing is this, though. You have two designated players both getting dissent yellow cards all the time. They've now been both suspended for these issues. Riqui Puig already missed one game because of the yellow cards. And again, I think it's 2 or 3 yellow cards that he actually got for fouls. In fact, I'm almost positive it's 2, including the last one that he got, which made him suspended, was actually for a foul. But most of his 8 yellow cards have come from dissent. Joseph Paintsil, a lot of cards from dissent. At one point, these guys have to have the confidence to know to let people foul them and keep moving and not play the victim card. Because as soon as the Galaxy start playing the victim in any game, and they love to do it against LAFC, which is why you've seen them, I think, stumble so much recently against them, is you have to not let teams get to you. Do you want to be a championship team? You have 6 games remaining. Who cares who you're playing? Go out there, put your foot on their throat, and get after them. It almost doesn't matter who you're playing. It's going to matter against El Trafico, because those are very emotional games, and you can't really you can't take the emotion out of those. But the rest of these, it doesn't matter. Galaxy have had a great season. It'll mean nothing if they flounder into the playoffs, because then it'll be more questions about whether or not they're good enough, whether they're not good enough. They don't need that doubt in their mind. But Joseph Paintsil, Riqui Puig, they need to adjust for these last 6 games. There's plenty of time for, both of them to get suspended again, quite honestly, for yellow card accumulation before the season is over, and you don't want to have that. So,
and Riqui's got a few other things going on that we've talked about. He has not chosen to speak to the media when he's been requested the last few times.
Yep.
Which is okay. That's fine. I know a lot of you people think, well, we the media think that everyone needs to come and talk to us, and that's not the case. But when you are the highest paid player on the team, when you are a big star, when you are a team leader, occasionally, and Sasha Kleshin would come whenever we ask him. Yoshida comes almost after every game. Chicharito did. Those are guys that enjoy doing that. They're stand up. They're being there. They're being accountable. Riqui doesn't have to do that, but he does have to, as the highest paid player on the team and the best player on the team, he does have to come sometimes. He hasn't wanted to do that. He's gotten a little squirrely on social media. Social media is hard. Is he kidding? Is this a joke? Is there an edge to it? He's butting up against maybe some dangerous areas, I think, a little bit. Maybe he's starting to get a little bit ahead of himself, and he needs to sort of dial it back to the guy he was a year ago.
I mean, for me, one is that I always want players to be their authentic self, and I think you would want that as well. If they think that this is positive for them, then go ahead and do it. I know most people, and by the way, our listeners will agree, most people do not care whether or not players talk to the media or not. They do not care. They think, who cares? Nobody cares, right? They don't need to do it. I think there's some accountability that comes with talking to the media. Greg Vanney has to talk to the media after every game. We get to ask him questions about why the team lost. We get to ask him questions about why the team won. We get to face that. And players have that accountability as well, right? You don't have to have it. You could certainly not talk to the media. I think it's a bad choice. I personally would rather hear from you, even if you want to yell and scream at me. That's fine. Ultimately, I'm pretty secure in how I ask questions and what I ask questions about and everything that goes on. I asked Greg Vanney about Joseph Paintsil. I included Riqui Puig in there, and Greg gave an answer on both, and I'll take Greg's answers as respectfully as he gives them. But Ricky's going to be Riqui, and at this point, I think you let him sort of be what he's going to be. I'm gonna not worry about him very much whenever it comes to these things. But ultimately, if this team falls short, if Riqui doesn't play well on El Trafico, then these things come to the surface again, right? It doesn't matter if the team's winning. If the team's winning, nobody cares about any of this. Nobody has to talk to the media if the team's winning. It doesn't matter. But if they don't, and by the way, it's a reminder that for 28 teams in this league, it will end in a loss, right? There will be a loss. You will be done. They will not be playing anymore. Your season will be over. You did not win the cup. The LA Galaxy, by statistically speaking, are more likely to be one of the 28 than that one team, the 1 out of 29 who wins an MLS Cup. That being said,
you could end in a draw and then lose in the shootout.
That's still loss. Like, you're going to lose somewhere in there. You could also not make the playoffs and then lose like a last
and
game.
Lose and win
win a last game and not make it, right?
That's true.
Absolutely.
That's true.
I was thinking about that.
Is that what you want?
No,
is that what you're hoping?
no. I was looking at fan appreciation numbers again today. Fan Appreciation Day is a recently horrifying experience for LA Galaxy fans. So that last home game of the year is always that Fan Appreciation Day. So we'll talk about that whenever it comes, but it hasn't been great. But you look at this and say, these are the things that factor into what is going to be happening through the rest of this. I didn't think the Galaxy played a horrible game. I think that there were some individually bad moments. I thought the defense played well against a St. Louis team that was, really, I think, struggling to create chances. That being said, they got 2 goals on the board. What are you going to do with that? Well, you cannot turn the ball over. It's crazy to me how it's not a transition defense the Galaxy have a problem with. It's a bad pass on a breakout. You're not even in transition at this point that is causing them so many problems. And so they have to clean it up. And listen, they're not going to change the way they play. And John McCarthy launches the ball long plenty of times. He doesn't always play it short. But that being said, you have to live and die by that sword. I think a lot of teams have decided, Kevin, that playing out of the back is not worth dying on that hill sometimes. Greg Vanney isn't one of those guys. So he thinks that he wants the possession. And he wants to be able to control things out, and it's fine. Quite honestly, it was a simple pass that Joseph Paintsil didn't make. It was a pass that any competent Major League Soccer player probably could do, any competent college player. That doesn't mean that things always work out the way you do, and it's not a knock on Joseph Paintsil, but what was the reaction afterwards? Riqui Puig has this problem where what is the reaction after you give up the ball? What happens immediately after?
And Greg Vanny talked about it at the last home game, the idea that if you have 65% possession, that's a good thing offensively, but it's maybe a better thing defensively, because that means you have to defend for less of the game than the other team does. But when you're doing that and you're giving up counterattack goals like that, you're giving away fast break goals.
Again,
you need to be prepared for that. Again, if you're only going to give the other team the ball a third of the time, if they're going to score, they're going to score on a fast break. So you got to be prepared to defend that. And the Galaxy haven't shown they can do that yet.
The Galaxy are excellent at defending counterattacks. That's never their problem. It's not. I guess technically you could call it a counterattack, Kevin, whenever you pass the ball in your own final third to the other team and then have to handle what's coming back at you. It's always those resets, because when you have the ball, when Joseph Paintsil has the ball, he's in a lane. Everybody can see that he's now going to move forward. That releases the defenders from where they are to start getting into the offensive set and start moving forward. You give the ball away during that transitional moment. And again, this isn't transitional defense, but that between that transitional moment of your defenders starting to go up and all of a sudden you give the ball away, well, now you just put everybody on their heels. And you have to come back and try to handle those moments. Again, Galaxy had two bad moments, and that really cost them in this game. I like Jovalic in there. I'm happy to see that he's returning. I think the Galaxy really need him. They need a 9. They need somebody in there to be able to fix a lot of the problems they have, which is sometimes playing 2 down the middle. And St. Louis was like, we're just going to stop it. That's why Royce didn't see a lot of ball. They put 2-3 guys around him. That was it. Man, we talked to Marco Royce afterwards, by the way. My first question was, they didn't do you any favors by making your first away game, in St. Louis at 11:45 in the heat and the humidity, right? There was a funny meme, I think, that one of the Galaxy fans put out. It was Marco Royce and Berkey, and they were talking to each other after the game, and it was like Marco Royce goes, is it always this hot and humid? And he's like, and Berkey's like, yeah. And he goes, do you ever get used to it? And Berkey's like, no, right? Like, it's one of those. It's just a miserable place to play, and that was tough for Marco Royce to battle through that. That probably gives them a lot of dividends going forward, though. The fact that you got him 90 minutes, he's now quote unquote 90 minutes fit. He's ready to go. If you need to start him, he's going to play. So, yeah, that's sort of where I sit. I'm less down on it. It's hard to win games on the road. It always has been. Even the best teams in this league struggle with that particular thing to do. So that's my takeaway from all that.
But boy, that would have given them a huge edge in the standings if they'd been able to pull that off.
Yeah,
and
8
we
points
talked about
clear.
them going, and it would have been their 16th win, and we talked about them going for the modern record, which is 19.
Mm-hmm.
Now I think that record, probably they might be able to tie it, but it's feeling like it's out of reach now.
It's an interesting one. By the way, happy birthday to Mike McGee, which was one of the things that always got to shout out some of the alumni. Do you have an alumni update? I
have some alumni news.
Okay,
Landon
go for it.
Donovan remains winless as a coach in the NWSL. His San Diego Wave tied their last game 1-1. Same player scored goals for both teams, an own goal and a goal for San Diego. So Landon Donovan is 0-1-1 as a coach. Joan Araujo is now playing at Bournemouth in the English Premier League, as everybody knows, but he will be here this weekend to play with Mexico at the Rose Bowl in a friendly against New Zealand. About 60,000, I think the crowd might be there. But then the big alumni news is our good, close personal friend Douglas Costa has surfaced. He's playing now in Sydney in the Australian League.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the big news.
Yes.
He now has an account on OnlyFans, which is a content subscription service. So he'll get some of the money of that. And it is a adult content subscription service.
Sometimes. It doesn't always have to be. So that was my question. I was like, what kind of content are we seeing from Mr. Douglas Costa?
Maybe they're instructional soccer videos.
They very well could be. So again,
but he's getting paid for this. So I guess he's not getting a DP salary there in Sydney.
I guess not. There's too many jokes there. And this is a PG-13 show. Yes.
And another piece of news, which is not alumni news, it's actually, what's the opposite of alumni when someone's new?
When somebody's new, I don't know. It's new.
Yeah,
it's new
alumni
person
is like an older person. Yeah. So the Galaxy have a new vice.
I was going to say, do you want breaking news? Is this like?
Yes, this is
okay.
breaking
Okay,
news.
hold on. Let's do that. Let me press the button. Do the thing. Are we ready? And let's try. Hold on. Let's make sure I got it. Okay, here we go. And now, directly from Corner of the Galaxy, we have Mr. Kevin Baxter with all your best breaking news. All right, Mr. Kev, go ahead. It'll keep playing the music while you're talking. It's fine.
The Galaxy have a new vice president of PR and communications. Jamie Alvarez. She was formerly director of corporate communications for the Vail Resorts. Her family is Cuban. We had a long half-hour plus conversation today about pre- and post-revolutionary Cuba, otherwise known as Cuba. And her family, she has family still down there in Cuba, and her mom and dad escaped the revolution and came here, and she grew up in Florida. And she's been on the job all of 3 days now, but
Yes.
And this is a big but for you and I.
Yes.
She's already aware of the podcast, so we're screwed. She already knows
we're in
about
trouble.
it.
We're in trouble big time.
Yeah.
Well,
We're never going to get. I mean, I thought we could maybe just like, oh, you might want to check it out. No, she knows about it. So
well, Jamie,
we're toast.
welcome to the COG family here. You have to deal with us, so I'm sure you'll be talking with both of us on a regular basis. But welcome. It's always good. Again,
Invitation to come on anytime.
Anytime, obviously. Open. Phone lines are open. No, it's you've seen what the LA Galaxy have sort of built and created behind the turnover after Chris Klein left, and it continues to build. And I would say that when you look at the guys who they've retained, when you look at the people they've brought in, all those things have sort of matched together to be a pretty, what I would say, a pretty competent front office along all terms there, all the way through Tom Braun and everybody else. So, I'm looking forward to meeting her. It should be fun.
And she and I talked about that a little bit when we weren't talking about Cuba, about the thing of, look, we're going to criticize you and we're going to praise you. And what's going to determine when we criticize and when we praise you is largely the score of the game. If you're winning, a lot of praise. If you're losing, a lot of criticism. Yeah. And I'm not sure that that's always been understood, but I feel like Will and Tom and Greg and they understand where we're coming from. We're not beating up on them. We're just reflecting what happens in the field on the weekends.
Well, yeah, and the other part about that is that we're fairly honest on this podcast all the time. And so if you do stupid things, like remember the LA Galaxy got caught cheating, that was stupid. Whether that was Dennis DeClosa or anybody else who was labeled with that particular folly there, it was a huge thing. And so we'll talk about that. And that's a black mark the Galaxy get to wear for a very long time. So really interesting. Glad to have Jamie on board there. Hopefully I'll get to talk to her and meet her very soon. So excited to see that. That's good. Let's see. I wanted to get to some charts because it's always fun to talk about charts and look where the LA Galaxy are. And thanks to Mr. Raymond Plaza, who is our conductor extraordinaire, our composer extraordinaire. We now have a new charts and maps, charts and graphs theme song. So let's get to that.
Graphs, bar charts and graphs. Bart's gonna give us our charts and graphs. Bar charts and graphs, bar charts and graphs. Come on, give me those stats.
All right, there we go. Ray, as always, quirky, fun, exactly what we need on this.
He's our own BJ Liederman.
I know. We're just killing it lately, thanks to Ray. Ray, it's really all Ray and nothing to do with me. The LA Galaxy, whenever we look at the DP minutes, still standing at about 80.3. That was even with Puig missing. If we go in and look at these a little bit singular here, Kevin, we have Gabriel Peck with 2,191 minutes, almost 2,200 minutes. He leads all designated players. Riqui Puig with 2,000. Joseph Paintsil with 1,882. So about 80, just under 80% for Riqui Puig, and then 74.7% for Joseph Paintsil, so a little under 75% of the total available minutes. That will go lower as he misses El Trafico on there.
But this is the best in several seasons, right?
It's the best. It's by far the best that I have recorded since I started in 2018. So the best one was in 2021 at 62.9%, so 63%, and the LA Galaxy right now are averaging 80.3% this season. So overall, their total average, including the season so far, is 60.2%, Kevin. So again, well above sort of the average that has been established over this time. And I think that it correctly reflects that the Galaxy have had more success this year. They've kept their designated players on the field, and they've had success doing that. Another thing that I've been watching here, you talked about it, 15 wins right now, 6 losses, 7 draws for the LA Galaxy. If we look at their point or better that they have in this particular point in the season, 78.6% of the time the LA Galaxy have gotten a point or better. You go back to 2011, that was 85.3%. You look at 2014 when they won an MLS Cup, that was 79.4%. So right now it's 78.6%. Their losing percentage right now is 21.4%. A little bit worse than in 2014 when it was a little over 20%. A little bit worse than in 2011 whenever it was 14.7%. So looking at those losses again, the LA Galaxy just now with 6 games remaining, Kevin, finally had enough losses to get you onto a second hand. So 6, right? You can count 7 in Leagues Cup overall, but it's 6 losses.
Speaking of charts and graphs, where's that chart you had last week that showed the points? Yeah,
Yep.
There we go.
So this is through 28 games, 52 points right now. That gives them the 4th best start through 28 games in LA Galaxy history. Having said that, it's the 3rd best in the modern era because 1998 was 61 points, but that was shootout time. It was going up against 2010, which is 56 points, 2011, which was 55 points. 2011 widely considered the best LA Galaxy team to ever play. So they are just 3 points astride there of that 2011 team, still even with the loss, even whenever they were whenever you put them in that position. So to me, that still says this LA Galaxy team is extremely good. But having said that, Kevin, what's one thing the LA Galaxy have not done all year when they have lost a game?
When they actually lost.
No, it was lose the next one. Right? It was lose the next one.
Yeah. I was going to say that.
They have never lost 2 games in a row this entire season, right? And so it's oscillated back and forth. They lose a game, they come back, they either win or draw the game, but they get themselves away from basically whatever was happening there. So their losing streaks this year, their biggest losing streak is 1 game, which isn't really a streak at all. That's a big ask whenever you're going against El Trafico and trying to see sort of where that puts them on this particular.
But it's also very good for that first round of the playoffs when it's 3 games.
Yeah. It is absolutely no,
which is still stupid. But anyway,
it is still stupid. Just looking at the overall balance, 33 points at home, 19 points on the road. Just to put that into perspective of where the LA Galaxy are, the 19 points is fairly accurate right now to what 2021 ended up being, but they only won 29 points at home that year, so already more points.
Are all those other totals for the full season?
What do you mean? Like
in
everything
20
else? Yes. Everything else is full season. This is as it stands right now in 2024.
Because they have 3 home games left, so they have a chance to be the second best home team in Galaxy history, and not even the modern era, in any era.
Yeah,
because 41 is the best. They can get to 40.
Yep.
And we're going to talk about the home field advantage and what it means in a little bit. But I mean, if they equal that record, that just comes out of nowhere. Remember, they lost 18 games last year.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Look at 2023, 24 points at home, 12 points on the road, right? The Galaxy have 19 points on the road so far. So again, it's not hard to compare it to last year and say, oh, the Galaxy are better, but it's actually in historical perspective pretty big. The points per game as it stands right now in 2024 is 1.86. 1.86 would be basically the second best, tied for the third best, because there's a tie for 2010 and 2011. Both had 1.97 points per game. The LA Galaxy sitting at 1.86 points per game right now, and 1.79 in 2014. This is, again, an above average LA Galaxy team because, funny enough, Kevin, if you look at all this, the average for the LA Galaxy throughout their history is 1.50 points per game. Exactly right on the average of win one, lose one, win one, lose one, right? 1.5 is sort of where you end up whenever you sort of play that 50-50 game.
And the Galaxy have not lost at Dignity Health Sports Park. They're 10-1-3 at home, but the loss was at the Rose Bowl. They haven't lost in their home stadium yet.
Correct as usual, King Friday. Let's see. LA Galaxy goals scored. They're now at 53 goals scored. They're at 38 goals allowed. The crazy thing to me is the LA Galaxy, whenever you look at their goal differential, Kevin, and the goal differential is at plus 16 right now. I think I may have lost that chart. Let me see if I can find it here real quick. Let's see. Away points and then home points. And then there's that
charts
one.
And graphs.
Charts and graphs. Yep. Pato's going to give us our charts and graphs.
Charts and graphs. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't see it. That's okay. I can still tell you. I think they're at plus 16 right now, and we can actually go to the standings and verify that. And let's see, the LA Galaxy are plus 15. They were minus 16. Oh. Yeah, it's okay. My math is still there. They were minus 16 last year. Minus 16.
So at 31 goal turnaround, yeah.
31 goal turnaround. They've scored more goals. They've let in less goals. And because of that, they are basically a plus 31 in terms of goal differential, in terms of the change from year over year. So that's been a really big sort of thing. The other thing that has been consistent with the LA Galaxy is scoring first. You want to talk, the LA Galaxy have lost 3 games in recent time. All 3 of those games have been because the LA Galaxy have allowed the first goal. They allowed the first goal to LAFC at the Rose Bowl. They allowed the first goal in the loss to Dallas at Dallas, right? And then they allowed the first goal against St. Louis, and they lost that as well. The LA Galaxy have a really good record whenever they score the first goal. 13-1-2, Kevin. They are 2-5-3 whenever they score the first goal. Having said that, the 2-5-3, whenever you score the second, allow the first goal, that 2-5-3, actually, whenever you look at it and you combine the two wins and the 3 draws, is 5. So 50% of the times the LA Galaxy, when they've allowed the first goal, have come in and actually got a point or better from that as well. So not a horrible result even whenever they do. But having said that, outscored 19-14 whenever they allow the first goal. And then they're outscoring opponents 39-19 whenever they score the first goal. Huge difference. 13-1-2 again all season. Then the only one that they lost was against Chicago in Chicago, if you remember that fun game. The Galaxy scored first and then allowed 2 goals.
You know that charts and graphs jingle? It reminds it's very similar to, I wonder if our composer was influenced by an old TV show called Syphil and Ollie. It was a couple of sock puppets, and they had jingles and sounded just like that.
No, absolutely not. I'm going to guess 100% that was not our thing. So
Syphil and Ollie was awesome.
So anyway, so you look at that, you look at all the charts, you look at all the graphs. That's sort of where we put it. Everybody's favorite one. I'm going to tell you something that maybe will make you feel better. Kevin, most of the losses that the LA Galaxy have come in the first game of the month. They lost the first game in April. They lost the first game in June. They lost the first game in July. And they now have lost the first game in September. So the LA Galaxy, for whatever reason, don't seem to like that first game. Having said that, they have 3 more games in September, and if the chart is to be believed, there seems to be a lot of credence to the fact that the Galaxy would at least win or draw games 2, 3, and 4 of September. Doesn't bode well for that October 1st game, no. but it's been hit or miss. All right, hit or miss. Well, it's not 100% there.
And playoff opener. I mean, playoffs are going to play in November. They're going to have a first game in November. It's going to be a playoff game.
Eventually, you have to do it. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that one up whenever you look at everything. But the Galaxy have lost out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The Galaxy have lost 4 games as the first game of the month. So
look at May, man. That was a good month.
May, draw, win.
Yeah.
So in terms of points, June was the best for the LA Galaxy. They got 12 points in June from 5 games, 1 loss, 4 wins in that, a 2.40 points per game average in June. That being said, August would also technically be really good. They got 1 win in August, and so that 3.0 points per game.
March is 11 points.
March is 11 points. Yep, and 10 points in May. Your May that you liked, that was 10 points there, right? So again, months with 11, 10, 12 points, 9 in July. July was a little bit tougher schedule. I think it's time that we talk about the schedule now, because the LA Galaxy coming up do have some difficult games, and I think that's sort of what you wanted to highlight. Let me just go over the schedule, and then you can talk about it. LA Galaxy hosting LAFC on the 14th after the international break. The LA Galaxy will have the Portland Timbers away at Portland coming up on the 18th of September. Difficult game, 4 days after El Trafico. And then you're going to get the LA Galaxy hosting Vancouver, who I believe just signed a midfielder, so that'll be interesting to see how that changes that squad, and Vancouver has been quietly good. Then you're away to Colorado, never an easy game, home to Austin, and then, of course, everybody's favorite team to play against, the Houston Dynamo, away at Houston. So your fan appreciation game will be the LA Galaxy versus Austin FC, and then the last game of the season will be away to Houston on decision day for the LA Galaxy. All of these things could have some really big impacts. But what did you want to say about the schedule?
Well, first of all, tell me I'm a good boy because I waited till the end.
You did. You did really good job.
Okay. What I want to look at is a little bit of comparison to the Galaxy and LAFC as they go down the stretch here, because what I'm trying to highlight is the fact how important this El Trafico is going to be. The Galaxy, you just pointed out, they have 6 games remaining. It's a very difficult stretch. I would argue it's probably their toughest 6-game stretch of the season. 3 games at home, 3 games on the road. Only one of the 6 games will be against a team with a losing record currently, and that's the Fan Appreciation Day with Austin. Everybody else has a winning record. Everybody else is in the playoff race. Everybody else is playing for something. It's going to be very difficult. The Galaxy, as I said, 10-1-3 at home. The one loss was actually at the Rose Bowl. I don't count that as a home game. They're 5-5-4 on the road. They need to have home field advantage in the playoffs. Right now, they're leading the conference, but LAFC has 3 games in hand. You look at LAFC's schedule, they have 9 games left. 6 of them are on the road, and then they have the U.S. Open Cup at home. But they only play, of their 9 games, only 4 are against winning teams. They play at Houston, the Galaxy. They play Austin at home, at Dallas, at Cincinnati. That's going to be a tough trip. They play St. Louis at home, at Sporting Kansas City, at Vancouver, and then they end with San Jose. Let's just look at that. The LAFC will, with the 3 games in hand, they will play this weekend, missing 6 players, starters to international duty. They will play another game, U.S. Open Cup. They actually have 10 games, while the Galaxy plays 6. They're going to be exhausted. They're already tired. The field is a mess. The field at BMO. That is already, Houston lost a player to that field just last weekend. So that's going to hurt them. But when I was looking at this, I said, okay, let's say LAFC wins 5 of those first 8 games when they come back, and they get 15 points. So now they're up to 62.
Right.
If the Galaxy beat Vancouver, Austin, Portland, and then maybe they draw Houston, they're at 61 points. And that's where we left out the El Trafico.
Right.
So a reasonable expectation is the Galaxy get to the end of the season with 61 points without El Trafico. LAFC gets there 62 points.
Right.
That El Trafico looms huge. Whoever wins that wins, based on this, whoever wins that wins the conference, gets home field advantage. Now, the Galaxy have played LAFC twice in the playoffs. Both times there, they've lost both times. Again, the Galaxy haven't lost at home all season. LAFC is 9-2-3 at home, so they're very good at home too. You need to win the El Trafico, then you need to get that home field advantage for the playoffs. That's the way through to MLS Cup. I think whichever team has to play that game on the road, and we're assuming they're going to make it to the final. These 2 teams, they're the 2 best teams.
Western Conference final, right?
Yeah, Real Salt Lake's in there, and a lot of different things
Colorado's
can happen.
there.
Colorado's there. You got to go play at altitude. A lot of things can. Vancouver's going to be there. A lot of things can happen. But I'm looking at it as these are the 2 best teams in the conference. They're likely to meet in the conference final. Whoever has that home field advantage for that one game, remember, it's not multiple games for that part of whoever has the home field advantage for that one game is going to have the inside track to MLS Cup, which I think we're assuming at this point is probably going to be in the East.
It seems that way. I mean, certainly one is Supporter Shield, right? Let's look at that real quick just so we understand where the Galaxy stand. Having played 27 games, Miami now has 59 points, which is 7 points clear of the LA Galaxy. And having played 1 less game, I would say that there's probably nobody, and maybe Columbus. They were talking about Columbus has a bunch of games in hand, technically 3 games in hand on the LA Galaxy. Same sort of with LAFC, but maybe Columbus has a chance of Supporter Shield. But as of right now, it's Miami's to lose, and I don't think that Cincinnati, Columbus, or LAFC, or even Real Salt Lake are going to be able to catch Miami Supporter Shield. So I think that ship has sailed.
But I think Columbus could beat Miami in the playoffs. Which
I agree.
If the Galaxy finish ahead of them, then they would get to host that. I'm guessing Columbus is probably going to close real strong, and they might finish second in Supporter Shield. If they beat Miami, they get the host again.
Right. So that's something to sort of watch there. So I think Supporter Shield has sailed. We've talked about how the LA Galaxy get not just for a home field advantage, but also for CONCACAF Champions Cup, where the Galaxy want to play next season. So again, you can win MLS Cup. That would certainly do it. The Western Conference with the most points, the next most points in the regular season. There are 3 ways for the LA Galaxy to sort of get this next spot into CONCACAF Champions Cup, possibly finishing second in the West, gets them there as well. But again, I'm going to break my rule. And my rule has always been, it's been mathematical and blah, blah, blah. If the LA Galaxy want to really control their destiny, right? And Kevin, I think you've explained it well. The closeout of the season, everything that's going to happen, the points that might be available here at the end, where the Galaxy want to finish ahead of LAFC in the Western Conference. I know that's simplistic in just saying, oh, well, it would be nice. Yeah, you always want to finish, but it's more important than that. There's 2 reasons that the game against LAFC at El Trafico coming up on the 14th is, the biggest, most important game of the season. One is because the Galaxy haven't beaten LAFC this year. There needs to be a mental change within the Galaxy that says, yes, we can beat them. Yes, we can do it. Yes, we can cause them problems. If the Galaxy are able to do that, Kevin, then I think they go into the playoffs with a mentality of we can beat these guys. They're scared of us now of the time. So that's one important reason why the Galaxy need to win El Trafico. The other one is the playoffs, and you hit it on the head. You have to finish above LAFC. It is the best way for you to compete for an MLS Cup. It gives you the best chance. The Galaxy are in a position right now as they sit. They close it out. They win all their games for the rest of the year. I can almost guarantee you they're going to sit there on top of the Western Conference. It would take a monumental effort by LAFC, who has a ton of games. You mentioned 6 internationals away on international duty for this weekend's game. They'll come back. Joseph Paintsil away on international duty for the LA Galaxy. He'll come back, but he's suspended for El Trafico, so his inclusion not that important, right? But they'll come back, and then they still have to play. So they're adding more games to the workload for the guys who are already there. That's tough. If the Galaxy put together a string of 4 or 5 or even 6 wins to close this out, the Galaxy more than likely finish top in the Western Conference, and when they do that, they have home field advantage. That's why El Trafico, if the LA Galaxy are serious about making life easier for them, because I'm not saying they can't go to BMO and beat LAFC, Kevin. It's just a really tall task if you're asking them to do that. You're going to have the best game of the season for the LA Galaxy in order to make that happen. So you're asking a lot. So for that reason, I'm calling El Trafico a must-win game for the LA Galaxy. And I don't like to do that, but this is, if you were serious about being MLS Cup contenders, if you want this to be your year, El Trafico is a must-win game for the Galaxy.
And a draw does not make that statement. A draw helps you a little bit in the standings.
Right.
It doesn't make that statement. And we're talking about playoffs?
Yeah, playoffs. Yes, we're talking about playoffs. There was a clinching scenario going on Sunday, but there was the teams lost, and MLS goes, there are more than 20 different scenarios that would have the LA Galaxy clinch. Guess what? None of those happened. They needed to win the game. It didn't matter. So now we'll go into the next game on the 14th, possibly with some clinching scenarios, and I think, beating LAFC is going to be one of those things. This
is LAFC's seventh season, right? 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, seventh season. I don't think the Galaxy have ever finished ahead of them in the standings.
No, I don't believe so. I thought there was one year where they both didn't play well, but I think the Galaxy
that was
were
2020.
Yeah.
I think that was the COVID year because they went. LAFC went to Seattle and lost. No, the next year, 2021, they did make the playoffs. That might have been a year where the Galaxy finished better. Yeah, but I'm not sure. But in any case, it's not common for the Galaxy to finish ahead. But put that last chart back up too, the one about the CONCACAF Champions Cup, because there's an interesting thing there. You look at U.S. Open Cup finalists. Who are the 2 finalists? LAFC and Sporting Kansas City. Yeah. Sporting Kansas City is going to get a slot in the Champions Cup.
They already have it. They already got it.
Right. Even though they've had one of the worst seasons in their history, they're still going to go there.
Yep. It's U.S. I mean, in a way, offering a CONCACAF Champions Cup spot to a tournament in which most MLS teams couldn't play is really a strange way to go about things, but that's an MLS problem.
But that would have been cool if someone like El Paso or some of the USL Championship team, they've made it in the past. Sacramento made it a couple of years ago.
It's just interesting to me that like if you're the LA Galaxy, you didn't have a chance to win the US Open Cup. There's not even a competition in which you could have won, so you were not in competition for that CONCACAF champion spot. That to me doesn't seem right. That doesn't fit right. So as far as I'm concerned, you either have to make the U.S. Open Cup a real tournament again and actually play in it, or you have to strip the CONCACAF Champions Cup from it because, quite honestly, you're not getting the full participation from the top tier.
I see that part of it, but I do like the fact that there is a window, however small it may be, for a USL Championship team to get in there. Again, Sacramento made it a couple of years ago. That'd be fun to see them play Tigres or America in Mexico City.
I would like to point out though that USL teams had a chance to win the US Open Cup, but the LA Galaxy and teams that were not invited to play in the US Open Cup, and what was it, like the top 8 finishers or whatever, did not have a chance to compete for that trophy. Just again, it's USL had a better path to getting the CONCACAF Champions Cup spot than the LA Galaxy did in the US Open Cup.
Yeah, percentage-wise, yes, absolutely.
You can't make that happen. By the way, shout out super chat from Papa, $1 super chat. Certainly appreciate that. Thank you. And I believe your first super chat. Thank you. Certainly appreciate it. Michael, $10 super chat. Michael goes deep. This is a deep cut. If you're from Orange County, I think you know. But he goes, funny you mentioned Goat Hill Tavern. My brother punched his friend in the face after a night of drinking at Goat Hill Tavern on Sunday. Police came, but no arrest booking. So go Galaxy. There you go. See, that is the type of love that you can get at Goat Hill Tavern. Again, It's a slur for people in Costa Mesa. Oh, you live up there on that Goat Hill. That was where this whole thing. Goat Hill Tavern is one of the better dive bars, sawdust on the floor type places. A bunch of different beers that are possible at in the city of Costa Mesa there. Interesting enough, they spell Goat Hill as 2 words, goat and hill, right? And at the railroad, we spell it 1 word. Goat Hill is in its one
Well,
place.
you guys are clearly wrong. By the way, maybe that's a place that we should go do a remote pod.
I mean, dude, that place is awesome. Executive, thank you for the super chat, Michael. Appreciate it, and thanks for the shout out to Goat Hill Tavern. I would go there just to get a drink with people. Like, just screw the pod, let's go there to get a drink. It's always a fun place to go. Executive producer Herb in there for $20 super chat. Herb, always appreciate you. Late to the show, here to celebrate COG on a Tuesday. Missed tall Kevin Baxter at the live show. Herb still thinks you're tall. Sidetracking as usual. Will this front office personnel release the number of season ticket holders? Thanks, COG crew. Listen, we never get the real numbers, and whenever we do, I've been lied to in the past. So have you about them. So I don't trust them, even whenever they do, and whenever they actually do give them to us. That being said, I've been told that the numbers are very impressive this year, and so I would expect that it's near an all-time high. In terms of what the LA Galaxy have been doing. So that's what I understand to be the truth. Nobody will give me the exact number. And I'll Tom Braun, anybody in the front office want to call and give us the real number, we'll happily accept that real number. Like, tell us what it is, and then we can play that game. But
yeah, Tom, Will Squared, any of those people in there?
Anybody named Will in the
Miss Alvarez?
That's right. We'll happily do it. And by the way, feel the berm correct in saying season ticket member prices went up for a lot of people. A lot. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some changeover from season to season. Even in the premium side of things, they really went up. By the way, you know the Galaxy are giving away like the seats, like you have a chance to purchase a pair of seats and stuff like that.
Yes, I heard that. By the way, if you haven't done it yet, you should do it if you can afford it. You can't see it in my office here. I have seats from Yankee Stadium, from the Veteran Stadium in Philadelphia. They're really cool things to have. If you can afford to get a couple of seats from Dignity Hill Sports Park, you should really do it. Bobbleheads and stadium seats are my 2 favorite things.
It would be great. I mean, listen, nobody offered me the chance to purchase any, but I'm just saying, if you have some lying around, there's a space right over here. Don't tell my wife first. Do not tell my wife I'm saying this, but there's a space right here that we'd happily.
She's listening.
We'd happily park some seats here and have these for longest running team specific podcast in Major League Soccer history. You think maybe some seats should go right here? I'm just saying.
Then we could start the podcast by saying, pull up a seat and spend part of Monday with us.
We could just sit in the seats. Anytime we do a live show, we'll bring them with us and sit in the seats as our chairs. How about that?
You have a little wagon. You put it in the wagon.
I do have it. And Mr. Provino rightly says, rich Galaxy fans, that's how it always goes. It's so anyway, that's sort of where we sit there. I'm just telling you what I believe, that El Trafico is going to be an absolutely monumental game. And it goes more to me on the mental side of things than it really is just placement of the LA Galaxy and anything else, because I believe on any given, a game day that the LA Galaxy are capable of beating any team in Major League Soccer, including Miami, including LAFC, including Columbus, although Columbus to me just seems like, if there's one team where I'd be like, the Galaxy probably aren't beating them, it's probably Columbus. To me, they're absolutely an amazing team. I like Miami. They keep winning, and they're fun to watch if you enjoy that. But to me, Columbus is still the story of all this stuff.
Yeah, I'm not a big Miami fan. They got a lot of weapons, I know, and they're really good and they have a good record. But I'm just not sold that they're a complete team. I think the Galaxy have the advantage in this game. They're at home, where, as we mentioned, they haven't lost. LAFC has 6 players away on international duty. They're not getting a rest, and the rest of the team has to play in Houston this weekend. I feel like the Galaxy have a little bit of an advantage, but if the game ends in a draw, that's as good as a loss from a mental perspective. They need to win this game.
Let's see, a $5 super chat from Adam. How do you guys think season ticket memberships will do with the stadium remodeling next season? I think it'll be fine. I think that some people are going to have to move seats. I think there's a little shuffling there of some things that are going on. I think it'll be fine. The remodeling isn't gigantic or major. If you remember, Tom Braun broke news on our live show that one of the big news things about the stadium coming up was that they're remodeling all the bathrooms, Kevin. That's a huge.
That's big.
That got a round of applause, a gasp from our live studio audience whenever we were out at Galaxy Park. So
did he Did he talk about the Corner of the Galaxy booth that they're going to build so we can do all of our live podcasts
Right
from
there,
there?
right in the corner. Yeah, I know it should be in the corner, right? That's what I was telling him. You need to put it.
That's
in
the
the
bottom
corner.
of the stairs, but that's our place.
Right. We could just do live pregame shows from there. That'd be great. That's where we're at. Anything else you want to talk about, or I think we're good.
I was done like 20 minutes ago.
Yeah,
I
know.
just
You were
hung out.
done before.
And
you
that's
started.
like being at Goat Hill Tavern. I'll have another, please.
Yeah, yeah. One more, please. Hopefully nobody gets punched in the face if we go there, though. I mean, I'm sure somebody will take a swing at you.
It would help with me.
only
Well,
good things.
redecoration. Speaking of redecorations, the stadium. that'd help.
Only good things. Only good things. All right. I'm good. You're good. Let's get on out of here. If you're looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter on Twitter and X, God only knows why you'd want to do that. At KBaxter11 is where you can find him. LATimes.com for all of his wonderful articles. Check him out at KBaxter11, LATimes.com. If you're looking for me on Twitter and X, at Guesman, at Galaxy Podcast, head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can go to YouTube, you can go to Spotify, you can go to Apple iTunes, you can do all those things. But please check those out whenever you get a chance and tell all your friends, thumbs up, all those fun things. All right, Kevin, when you dance on top of the microphone, everybody can hear you
makes noise?
unless you mute it. Yeah, one of these days you're going to figure that out. All right, for Mr. Kevin the Panda Baxter, I'm Josh Pato Guesman. You've been listening, you've been watching to Corner of the Galaxy from the box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening. We ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye.